course. So if there are no further questions for science, I'd like to turn to business.
Now, is that further in the packet or earlier in the packet?
That is actually further in the packet, so it's page 8, which is 3 behind the science.
Business?
Business.
It's page 1.
Yeah, right. So, business under
Just
recommendation
say business down the bottom.
is 0.2, and so business department was slightly up this year in terms of their overall requests compared to last year. And so in terms of making sure we honor the requests of the students, with .2, we have a teacher right now at this time that is a .8. And so we'd be looking at potentially increasing that teacher to a 1.0 in order to cover the student requests. I will point out a new course for business. Tech Specialist, Microsoft Certification. This is new. We had 24 students requested, 13 alternates. And so at this point, 24 is a good start for this course.
I think this is a good department to point out one other piece that comes into play, because sometimes we get questions, sometimes there are questions regarding class sizes, and so what's an appropriate number, and that's different than what you're looking at. One of the added pieces of information is this alternate course here, in terms of the number of students who are asking for that if they don't get something that they're scheduled in. So it gives you a sense for where students whose schedules don't work out will fall. And so if you can leave a couple seats in those indications, that's a good thing. Now sometimes you can't. You look at things like the entertaining and marketing, and because that's what I call a bad number, right? 55 is a bad number because you run 2 at 27 instead of 3 at 17 or 18. There isn't going to be a lot of flexibility in those classrooms. But a place like small business management, where you're running it at 22, there will be some fall for students to go there. We looked at something that's called the hold report, and the hold report tells you how many students asked for the class, but then how many actually got it. And so we look at some of the history in terms of, there are some of these classes that you look at and say 40 kids scheduled it, but it ends up with 60 in it every year, because that's a spot for alternates that kids fall into. Or you have some courses where 38 kids sign up for it, but because of where it falls and how it fits with other classes, only 32 held it, so it didn't hold. And so we look at that when we're looking at class sizes to try to build in some space for those classes that we think are going to build. And to the ones who we think are either going to fall or stay the same, we schedule them pretty tight in terms of class sizes because we know it's probably not going to go up anyway from that standpoint, right? And that's not always possible, but this is a good department when you're looking at things that aren't core courses that not every student has to take. That happens with electives a lot. And so Mr. Lubowski does a nice job of trying to have some leeway for kids who are going to need courses.
Any questions on business? So the next one is on the chart is art. So
Next page.
art is the very next page,
Which one?
number 1.
Never gets old, Chair.
So art, interesting, this year we had advanced art was a course that typically was only having one section running, and this year the art department has as much students signed up for 2 sections. So at this point in time, we have, it says here north decreased 0.2. So basically we have a high school teacher who's currently a 0.4 at the middle school, 0.6 at the high school. And so in talking to the middle school, Dr. Cole indicated that North does not have a need for an art teacher. So the art teacher at the high school now is a 0.2. And at this point, we would look to make him, the high school teacher, increase 0.4, make him full-time at the high school, and and cover that with another teacher that is in another building, elementary or middle school building. Art is one of those, again, electives departments that there's a lot of mobility as students move through, as we go through the scheduling process, and some of these numbers here will increase, as you can see here with some of the alternate numbers are high. Ceramics, art and design, 134, and drawing and painting as well, 126. So that's obviously a lot more alternates than the actual primary request. And of course, our intro to 3D animation, our digital design, our advanced 3D animation, they're still holding true. We have a cap of 25 in there for their for the computers and the software licenses. Any questions about art? The next page is family consumer science.
I just, so when
Yes.
you're trying to figure out, who gets the class and who gets pushed off, I guess, is it a seniority kind of thing? Because then some of the kids would have an opportunity next year to take it, and then the older, obviously, if you're a senior, you wouldn't.
Correct. Yes, that's typically how we look at that, absolutely, guidance counselors. So my goal every year is to get the schedule built into the guidance counselor by May 1st, so they can sort through conference. That's the goal. I'll have a month to do that then before students leave for the summer. The next department is family and consumer science. So family and consumer science, we have 2 teachers in the department that currently this year are teaching 6 sections. And so they're going to teach those 2 6 sections again this year to help us with the request of the students. As you can tell, food prep is always a popular course. There are, again, very high alternate numbers, 280 versus 270 for primary. Indicated down here in the bottom. Currently, we have 2 teachers teaching 6 sections, and this is what they're going to do this coming school year as well. Our child development class, this is our daycare. These are actually combined, and they're blocks, and they run back to back in their blocks with 2 periods. And that's Mrs. Ryan runs that program. So are there any questions for family consumer science?
It's interesting because family consumer science, this is my first time through it, so I apologize for, I have a lot of, I love this.
No kidding.
The family consumer science is one of those departments that if you look at it, there are a couple, like if you look at food prep, and food prep is one of those courses that is really, really popular. And you can see that we're running the class size of 30, which is not optimal in terms of that, and there would be no room for it. But we have maxed out our staff. And so you then sit there and say, okay, well, do you try to look for a part-time family consumer science teacher? And so this is where some students are going to shuffle around in terms of may not get, and then they move to their alternate. And hopefully it's someplace else in this department, because there's other classes where there is plenty of space for students to add into. But it's that interesting piece about how the numbers work out if you look at some of the class sizes and where kids are doing in the class. And it's because the teachers are willing to teach 6 sections that we are allowed to, we can accommodate as many kids as we can. So the teachers really are going out of their way and trying to match the students' requests and give them what they want. So it's just an interesting department that way, that it's one that is really up against it in terms of numbers. So, which is a good thing, but it is.
So the next department is Tech Ed, STEM. And so that is 2 pages after FCS. So a lot of colors here. So in this case, the green is indicating drop is a strike through, so we're going to drop this course, has low enrollment numbers.
Oh.
So those 2 courses are not going to run next year. At this point in time, we have 3 teachers in the department that are willing to teach a 6th section. It's indicated down here below, in the yellow. I'm sorry, right here off to the right, 3-6 section. So there are 3 teachers that were willing to teach a 6th section. As you can see, the blue is combining, so we typically combine CAD 1 and CAD 2, Robotics 1 and 2, and also Artistic Wood 3 honors and Wood Manufacturing Tech honors will be combined as well. So that's what that's indicating there. This department, as you know, has rock star status in regards to the guitar building. I mean, literally and figuratively. I've been in there, and it's amazing work that they do, and I'm sure all of you have seen it as well in some of the presentations that Mr. Peitzman and Mr. Andrew have done. They continue to have some success in there. And again, this is an elected department, so your alternates are going to be much higher usually, typically, than your primary number.
So for the wood manufacturing, we have 8 students in one class, and the maximum was 18, is that?
So for Artistic Wood 3,
No, the bottom one.
this one here.
Combining them, and that, it's hard because they're not next to each other.
Yeah, and I apologize for that, because it my form, but yes, we would combine Artistic Wood, 27 and the 8 students here. Those would be combined.
Into 2 sections, so it would be 35 students in the 2 sections, so it would be 17 and a half kids per section.
That
Roughly,
happens
so.
virtually, yeah.
And it allows you to give the students what they want, so the teachers, like, it is harder for the teacher, because they're teaching 2 different levels at the same time. Now, these are level 3 and 4, so they are a little more independent, but it does then allow us to accommodate the student requests, because these are our most, persistent, if not most talented, woodworking students as they've gotten to level 4.
I'm personally saddened by the lack of interest in commercial architecture and green construction. Because those are big fields coming up in the future.
Correct.
Green construction especially. So,
And they didn't, I'm sorry, but they didn't run this year again either. This current year, they're not running as well. And so we've had discussion with Mr. Andrew Cuddy regarding this. We have Architecture 1 that's holding. And so the thought is to create an Architecture 2 perhaps that would combine commercial and green.
that's what I was just gonna ask you.
And what happened is Architecture 1 in years past used to be a semester course. It was made a couple of years ago to be a year-long course.
Uh-huh.
So I'm not sure if that's having any kind of impact as well in terms of commercial and green. So
Now, one of the things to also be proud about, because one of the pieces as we go through this is when do students not get what they request, right? There are 10 students who wanted some form of architecture are not going to get that, and will pick an alternate instead, right? They may fall in love with the alternate, but it's something they wanted that they're not getting. If you look through all the departments and look at the green, it adds up to only 21 requests, which is the lowest of the 3 years of data I had access to, by far, in terms of the number of students who have been cut from classes. And there are how many thousands of requests? Is it? I can't even imagine how many
It's close to-
thousands of total requests.
almost close to 20,000.
So 21 out of 20,000 requests we had to cut ahead of time, which means we really do, Mr. Lasky and the teachers really go out of their way to try to accommodate as many of those requests as humanly possible. It is an amazing percentage that they're able to do, but also because of the board support, right? I mean, when we're adding part-time staffing, we're adding money, and so that's asking you for your support to be able to do that. Because if we don't, we're gonna have to cut other sections, right? That's how you get to any number you want. You cut sections and kids have to go into alternates where there's room. So I do know that unfortunately it's 10 of the 21 are on this page, but overall it is a really good number of students that we are only forced to cut out of their request. It's really.
So in this case, though, we are not dropping the course, we are simply not running the course, correct?
Correct.
Because you use
Right.
both terms.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does say drop.
Not running,
Just
it's
not
dropping
running.
this year.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
That is a good clarification.
And so into Dr. Yardell's point, I mean, there are courses in the past that have have not run for a couple of years, and so then we have to look at our program studies, and at that point, we're going to eventually drop
Yeah,
from the
decided
program
that's
studies.
Oh,
sunset.
Correct.
we gotta get more people in done.
Start a campaign.
Yes.
Instructions used.
So that was Tech Ed.
No.
On to music. So music is
It's true, you're right.
next page, right after tech ed. So let me point out here under in music, there's a new course. It's called Chamber Orchestra. There were 12 students that signed up. You actually had to audition with the music department with Marissa, the orchestra teacher. And those are the 12. So that's a 4-year course. We share Marissa with the elementary schools. She's only a .2 at the high school. So in terms of adding this new course, we noted it here on the enrollment sheet. She's obviously not going to be at the elementary school for that .2, and then that'll transfer to the high school. So she will be a .4 at the high school. And Mrs. Warner and I are in discussions regarding sharing her with that. And going into it, Mrs. Warner, the music coordinator, K through 12, obviously knows that and understands that we need Marissa at the high school to teach chamber and then also teach her current course, which is 4.
With a net no cost to the district simply because of the elementary level, we are able to accommodate one fewer section. And so as we look at scheduling the elementary level, this is a K through 12 department, it is one of those areas where we're working with that.
So those of you who are new, again, the blue are combined, so this is symphonic. Mr. Fair, concert band as well is combined. The 4 orchestra, 3, that 3 means run 3 days out of cycle. 6 is obviously 6 days out of cycle. And so the 4 orchestra actually pairs up with our mixed choir down here, which is also run 3 days. It runs 3 days out of cycle as well. So students have an opportunity in period 2 then to mix and match and take 4 orchestra along with mixed choir. The new courses last year were Guitar Studio and Music and Media. And in this past year, Mr. Fair did teach a 6th section to get Guitar Studio off the ground. As you can see, it has plenty of alternate requests for Guitar Studio. So, are there any questions for music, regarding music? And again, Music Tech did not run last year, and again, unfortunately, we only had 3 students selected. So there's loss of interest in Music Tech 1 and 2.
Yes, because years ago, that was a fairly popular course.
Yes.
Now, on the other hand, AP Music has never reached 15, all those years, right? Much as I think it's enough. Ideal course for musicians, but obviously they don't think so. Right? There's something that doesn't draw them to that course. I don't know what it is. Because the teachers have changed over time. It's not just a teacher.
Right.
Mr. Labaki, what is the history of AP Music Theory in terms of the number of students? Is 7 common?
Yes.
You 2 just talking about it?
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
so I don't multitask.
I've not listened to. Thank you very much.
So yeah, AP Music Theory is typically a course that we run. We run it with 6. And so I will tell you, it's a singleton course. So you may run it with 6, and we end up at the end of the year might have 9, or by the start of the school year. Because then there's some interest, and students decide that okay, I want to take it. But it's to Dr. Yarnell's point. It sounds interesting, I guess, and the students. This isn't.
It has never drawn students to any great degree. As many years as we've run it. We've run it a lot of years.
So is it something that we should look at revamping in some way that would attract students if they're not interested?
Unfortunately,
I don't know how much you can
curriculum
revamp
have
AP
really.
course,
you have
right?
almost no.
You go to a different AP course, right?
We can
No.
revamp Music Tech, and we can't revamp AP
Correct.
Music
No,
Theory, because that's a college board set. But that is one of the, when you look at financial questions, right, it is a reasonable question to ask. We are running a section for 7 students. So whatever that cost, whatever that one class cost for that teacher, the question is it worth that or not? And those are when you look at our staffing and we look at music being able to be flat, and in terms of talking with Mr. Dalbert about what can the budget handle from a staffing standpoint, those are really honest conversations, right? And so with Ms. Warner, one of the conversations is music theory something we should run every other year? And what would those implications be, right? Would you get 14 kids if you did it every other year?
Would you get 7?
Or would you get 7, right? You know,
Yeah.
because is it primarily only seat, you know? And so we have to look at those types of scenarios. This is a department where, because we had some flexibility at the elementary level, we're making the recommendation that we do go ahead and run that course to honor. These are our top music kids, you know, that are probably many of them looking to do this type of thing in college, if not as a major, at least as a serious interest. And so it is a really positive course for those students. It's not the only course you would look at that is in single digits, but there are very few that are in single digits if you look through every sheet. But those are very, very fair questions. Those are conversations and decisions that can be made to say, no, we're not going to, but then we have to have the ramifications of what are then do those kids get and what are they getting and not, and you know, what is it worth is really that point in terms of the elective pieces. But it's good for me to have the history of music theory.
Absolutely, and I would just add too, in speaking to students regularly regarding courses, I will tell you that they overwhelmingly want like a studio in music. A studio where you can learn how to mix songs and produce song records and you know, that type of thing. That would be, as you can imagine, would just be very popular. So, and I had a student years ago try to start a petition for the tech school to start something like that. So I think that you would have that would explode.
And then for the few kids that would like to still take, does Bucks open that? Or to offer that? Do they have the AP music theory?
They can't offer AP courses
Why,
because those
but
are
like
high
their,
school.
the
So
college
they would
program?
have some level of music theory. Whether it would be accepted in other courses as a college course or not, it would depend on the curriculum, and I don't know often now. Because in some cases, the answer is yes. But you think about like biology. There's an AP biology, but that doesn't mean every college biology course is the same as AP biology. That would have to do with the college and the curriculum. And so we would have to go one off in terms of curriculum. That is one of the things to consider in some of the courses that don't, or the type of program Mr. Lasky's talking about in terms of studio. If the community college had that kind of interest and our students could be part of that, and also community members, dual enrollment might then benefit from that standpoint. Our kids could still take it, but we don't have to invest in the studio, because that would not be a cheap investment in terms of getting a real music studio up and running. So, yeah, it's good.
Mine's not a scheduling question. Looking at this reminded me that someone had asked me about choir. The only thing that we offer, I did honors, we offer honors symphonic band, but we don't have an honors option for any of our vocal. Unless I'm missing it.
So concert choir would be the closest.
But that doesn't get an honors credit.
Correct. Does not get non-credit.
Yeah, so I wasn't sure why. I guess that's a question, the curriculum.
It is a curriculum, and if you remember when we talked about the honors Wood Form,
Yeah.
which was the elective course that we talked about this year, one of the things we talked about was where are the equivalents in other departments, and what will be the next conversation. So Dr. Schein and I have had multiple conversations around are the recommendations we, as the administration, want to make in terms of courses like that.
Yeah.
Right, and obviously the reason band gets the honors credit is the marching band. It's not like the band kids are separated. It's the marching band component, and for that extra time they get the honors. Now the question is concert choir the same as that? Is chamber orchestra the same as that? We're gonna have to have some of those conversations and make those decisions. But
I knew it had come up during the woodworking thing, but I couldn't remember exactly what we had said, so I didn't want to give an answer.
at this point, they do not. So.
And I noticed your punny, music B flat, you said music would be flat or something like that.
Just now?
You didn't even
You
realize you
probably
made
wouldn't
the pun?
even know it.
He's a
Lots
natural
of
punner.
fun.
That was very sharp for me to know that.
You just keep coming.
Now, the other departments are all level from a staffing standpoint. So I'm going to ask Mr. Lobosky to look at each one of them so that you at least, and if we go in the order of the packet,
Yep, we can do that now.
that way
Social studies.
you can just give a brief scan if you have any questions, but
A number of
unless you have questions, we're not going to highlight as you answer things like that.
So if we look at social studies, AP European history, there are 4 requests. So We are not gonna run it this year.
Interested in your.
Is
Maybe ever again, right,
Yeah.
because we cannibalized it with world history, right, and American history, yes.
As you noted here, history A, B, C, and D are our special ed courses, are our part-time learning support courses. They're not figured into this again. And again, here on the right are co-taught as well. So obviously not as many alternates. Let you get down here to some of the senior electives, which are at the bottom here. 35 for psychology. AP psychology is usually a popular course.
I'm surprised by the AP World History, I mean, well, I feel like it always ends up being the social studies classes where we end up with, you know, a high number of kids who want to take, a number that's high for one section, but not high enough for two sections, and then you end up with a larger class size. It seems to always happen in social studies for some reason.
Correct. You're right, absolutely. It's like AP World.
Do you call that a bad number in business? That 32 is a bad number. Do you run one or two, right? So depending on the course, you make that determination.
And that's what AP World's sitting at 32 right now.
Especially with it being AP, because that's a lot of.
Yeah, I think that it has been for at least as long as I can remember, that's usually where it ends up, starting with Sam, my oldest, it always seems to be right there. And I think AP kids are somewhat, you know, they can manage it, and that teacher she's excellent, you know, I've never heard of any problem, she really is sharp. Just right, so.
Are you crossing notes from the music
I
department
am,
into
look at me
the?
crossing over, but I think that's where it has been and, seems to work. I would rather be, again, if you could make it smaller, I guess that would be fine, but I would never want to say, we're going to make it smaller by not having certain kids allowed to take it, because if they weren't being fine enough. I always would rather have kids be able to take an AP than be rejected from it, so.
And then the tech school, they're the good, that's that top number, right, in terms of total for tech school? That was next, I'm sorry?
Correct,
Yeah.
yes, so tech school is next. And
Oh.
again, these numbers here, as you can see, the students can certainly choose the course they want. But what I do, last year I started this, is I have the current students, when they register, they have to do this, they have to go on 2062, and those are the current students. And then here are new registrations, so these 100 are mostly, you know, new 10th graders maybe, but mostly are incoming 8th graders. That's what these numbers are representing.
And there's that 304 that we talked about earlier, that was 278 at this time last year in terms of requests, so that's a positive trend.
The only problem with that is, as those numbers approach 800 or so, 825, I think it is.
Capped over there.
Because the courses are capped in the number of students in each course, fewer of them will get their first choice.
Right. We will have to keep monitoring that now. Right now, we have the space.
Mathematics is next.
Yeah, look at that, you look at that.
It's also interesting that there's social studies elements right now, no alternates either. That's all excited about this page.
So, Increase Math 1 is dropped this year. We had 3 students. And math, you know, basically we're flat in math. The same numbers last year, same number of teachers. Our AP numbers are here, the AP courses are at the top. As you know, there was a new math sequence in the middle school.